Hey y'all, and welcome to the Sam Miriello Show. My name is Sam, and this is my show. Today we have a really awesome topic that we're going to be discussing with two amazing people. But before we begin, I will invite them to introduce themselves. So go ahead.
I can go first. Hey,
Yeah, go ahead.
my name is Payton. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm studying political science and First People Studies at Concordia. And I'm also the mobilization coordinator for ASFA, which is the Arts and Science Federation of Associations. We represent somewhere around 19,000 students.
Perfect. Well, I'm Victoria Pesce, and I use, well, first of all, she, her pronouns, and I'm a marketing major, minor in international business, Concordia student as well, obviously, and the external mobilization coordinator of the Concordia Student Union. So,
Awesome. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So as we know, school is being held online at Concordia University. It has quite a few issues that are coming up with that. And we're seeing that the university administration is reacting in its own way. But we also know that there's a response from the students themselves. So this is the Dear Concordia movement that you both have been organizing with other people. So I would love to know, like, what is the Dear Concordia movement?
yeah, so I'm going to start taking this, and then if you don't mind continuing, Peyton, that'd be great. But essentially, it all started with COVID, right? So we're doing our semester online. We're taking a lot of time at home. Obviously, it's affected our mental health. It's affected the way we interact with one another, the way that we engage with our education and stuff like that. So we kept hearing complaints regarding teachers' behaviors, regarding students' motivation, regarding students' mental health. And we kept bringing it to the administration saying that we needed things done. So as we saw in the winter semester, we got pass and fail really quick. So we were hoping to get the same thing for the summer, for the winter, for the fall, to accommodate to the students that don't necessarily have the mental capacity to take school to the full capacity that they used to before. So we started with just talking to the administration and bringing this to their concerns and letting them know that, you know, things need to be changed because this is a global pandemic, as everybody likes to say, and these are unprecedented times. So in these unprecedented times, my apologies, we expected unprecedented action, like action that would, you know, relate to this sort of situation. And unfortunately, every time we brought up these concerns, the students were struggling. It was in one ear, out the other. And well, the other universities aren't reacting, so we can't really do much. We got very lucky with students involving just posting their feelings online. And we had a trend that got to the administration before we even had a chance to send it to them. And this was the letter that was found on Reddit regarding an engineering student, if I remember correctly, saying that they were struggling and they didn't see the point of even attending school anymore. And this pulled finally a string with the administration, which led us to believe, okay, well, if they're not listening to the student reps that are here to tell them what the students are telling them, what if we get students to tell them themselves how they're feeling? Tell students to give them the platform, to give them the voices that they need, well, the voices that they have, to express their concerns to the admin, to let them actually hear us out and listen to the concerns, which started with the town halls that we did with all the other faculties. We tried to get as many different faculties involved to get the different perspectives onto one table, onto one platform, to really have the administration listen to us. So yeah, I'll let Peyton go a bit about the town halls, because the ASFA town halls were the ones that were the most successful, that brought this campaign really to the table and to light. So go ahead.
Yeah, so between November and December of the fall semester, we held these, they became weekly town halls. I think they were initially, we were going to have one, and then the first town hall, we honestly didn't talk a lot about building a campaign or demands. It turned into like almost a peer therapy session. Like it was like a peer support group where people really put their hearts on the table of where they were at and were really open with each other about how much they were struggling. And it was a really great space, at least for myself, to see that I wasn't the only student who was struggling with things. Lots of people are like realizing that they have like learning disabilities and stuff that they like didn't know that they had before, and are struggling to get those types of things organized. Students are struggling with isolation. They are low motivated. There's there's COVID, but then there's also like the American election. There's tons of things happening. There's like an overthrow happening in Uganda right now. Like there's just so much happening globally that this moment is really overwhelming for students, especially when all of that stuff is online, and so are our classes, and so are our friends, and so is our time to relax. And so it's really difficult to sit down and focus and read your readings online and do your lectures online and not just be bombarded with constant bad news about the pandemic, about the recession, about just global unrest. And so, yeah, the town halls became a really great space for students to kind of open up about that. And we continued having them every week until the end of the semester. And so what started as students just sort of being open about how they were feeling turned into campaign planning and turned into these demands that we're asking students to motivate for when they participate in our campaign. So the demands that we're motivating for is full re-implementation of pass-fail for all courses. It's not enough to have pass-fail for one course. That was introduced after the DISC deadline. Like you were unable, like everybody who would have taken a pass-fail, and of course some students were still needed that pass-fail, but a lot of students had already dropped their courses. So we think like that's unacceptable, and we need for full courses. We also need universal standards for professors to follow. Something that we noted in these town halls is that was really overwhelming students is that every day and every class is a different story, and you never know what the expectations for you from your prof is. For example, in myself last semester, I had one course where we didn't have a single Zoom lecture. I never saw my prof's face even once. He just put the PowerPoints online, and that was the political science course. And then I had another class where they gave us so many movies to watch, and it was like a treat that we were getting all of these movies, yet still like they're like 4-hour-long documentaries on top of the readings. Like profs don't understand that we don't have more time right now, and that's something that students are really struggling with. And the inconsistency with using Moodle. I was speaking with some engineering students who were telling me that they don't have a Moodle page for their course. Their prof emails them a Zoom link every week, and it's like the Zoom link is in like the subject heading. Like it's like not a professional email. There's almost like no context to it. It's just a Zoom link. The other one is the elimination of invasive systems like Proctorial and COL. There's so many reasons that these systems aren't good for students. And like I invite people to research that themselves if they haven't experienced problems. But not only are they invasive, but the systems will be triggered by very small actions by the student who's taking the exam. And there's almost no leeway once that system triggers that you're cheating. There's almost no way to prove that you weren't. And so that's a really, really big problem for students. Another one is tuition justifications. So we actually did receive, all of us did receive an email from Concordia last week that gave tuition justifications. And yeah, they don't make a lot of sense. I want to note to people that our tuition actually increased this year by 3.5%. So that's about $85 for Quebec students and over $200 for Canadian students. And Concordia didn't say what international student tuition rates were or what any sort of the increases were on their tuition justifications. They like none of these programs are the same. Like, I don't know. I think it was a failed justification. It doesn't give us a clear breakdown of, it's not a spreadsheet with numbers. It doesn't give us a clear breakdown of how much money was spent on what and why. It just is essentially a letter saying, oh, but we still offer you a couple services. So it's like, oh yeah, like we paid you money and you're still doing half your job. Like, of course you're still offering a couple services. Like, you don't get a pat on the back for doing the bare minimum because theoretically you could be doing nothing, right?
Well, to even just to go on that, the fact that they give us back $17.70, that's something that like students were talking about and the university themselves were really proud of. They took a lot of pride in the fact that they reduced tuition by $17 for students. And I want to emphasize that this $17 was taken from students' money. So that was going to the recreational facility for students, to help not invade, but create, this community for us. And out of everywhere that they can cut the budget, out of everywhere where they can pull money from, they pulled it from us once again. So to see this like increase after seeing those actions, it's just consistently showing us that we're not the priority on their list, and it really is more their income that they're focused on. So, yeah.
But I just find that so strange because you know, Concordia is an amazing school. There's so much that the admin could be doing for us to make the situation better. Like, you know, this is such a stressful time for everyone, and I'm just wondering, like, why does it feel like they're pushing back, you know? Like when it comes to like the pass fail, like personally, like I know that the students were like about to ask for full pass fail for all courses. And then like a week before the announcement, the admin was like, we'll give you one pass fail. And I just found that very weird. It felt like they were trying to prevent us from having this when it was very clear that this would make students like a lot more comfortable. Like I was just wondering, like, what do you think is going through the admin's head right now?
So, oh, did you want to go, Payton?
I kind of do. Okay, that's a really good question. So one really important thing to keep in mind with pass fail is the university, like if we drop our classes, like I said before, they waited until the last minute to tell us that we were going to have pass fail. Every class we fail, the university makes more money off of us. It's not in their financial best interest for us to be succeeding in our courses, because if we drop them and if we fail them, we just need to take them again. And yes, they don't want everybody to be failing. That would look bad for them. But they are allowing people to slip through the cracks, and they're knowingly allowing people to slip through the cracks, and they're making money off of that. So I want people to keep that in mind. The other thing right now is the university is bleeding money. The reason that they're bleeding money isn't because there was a decrease in enrollment. I'm sure like Vic can attest to this too. ASFA's student fees, like the fee levies, the union dues that we collect, we had an increase because more students enrolled this year. So it's not an issue of enrollment. It's an issue specifically of international student enrollment, because the university has created itself a revenue stream that solely relies on the overcharging of international student tuition in order to fund its endeavors. But additionally, there's money in savings that the university has, that every university has in trust, that they're choosing not to use to improve our experiences this year. And they're choosing to argue with us on pass fail, because the longer we're arguing about pass fail, the less time we have to argue about tuition, because we need pass fail first before we can move on to bigger things. We need our immediate needs met. And as soon as they give us that, they know that we're going to move on to the next demand. And so they'll just keep us on demand number one as long as they can.
Just to go off of that a little bit, in terms of pass fail, that didn't pass at first because the university was so keen on the fact that no other university was doing it. Originally, when we had pass or fail in the winter semester, some of the backlash that they got was, but we didn't understand the terms of pass or fail. And that's another issue that the university has to address and has to acknowledge, is if you're going to be giving us a pass fail option, you should acknowledge the fact that that pass or fail is equivalent to a grade that we would have gotten. So I understand that, like, no, getting a letter grade is like an actual grade, whatever, but for grad school and all of that, a lot of the issues are, is if I take a pass fail, it won't count. Or if I take a pass fail, how will it look for my future jobs? How will it look for this and that? And I think the university needs to take a stance on that for themselves and stop saying that, oh, well, whatever people take it as, they take it as, and make an announcement saying everybody should acknowledge this pass fail, given the fact that we were in a global pandemic. They need to take the time to actually create this standard and create this precedence for the other universities to follow along and really like accept the fact that this is, again, a global pandemic, a global crisis. So
yeah,
I can emphasize that.
And Concordia needs to recognize that it's seen in like I don't know, the broader like society of Canadian universities as a progressive university, right? Like that's the branding that Concordia has. And so if they're not taking the steps to make things equal for students, then like who else, what other school is going to be doing that work, right? Something else that I want to note is when I was in conversations with the Dean of Arts and Science, they were really citing that we didn't need pass and fail because students did really well in the winter 2020 semester. And I want to highlight, students did well that semester. One, we were in person for half of that semester. We didn't go online until after midterms. Two, we had a reading week. We had a reading week in the winter semester. We've been demanding a fall reading week for years. In Ontario, where I'm from, there's not a single university that doesn't have a fall reading week. And it's like a huge issue. It's honestly ridiculous that we don't have one. But not only did we have a reading week in the winter 2020 semester, we had 2 other weeks off of class to spend time studying. So students are performing well last semester. It's because we had 3 weeks to just focus on our studies, to be offline, to be just catching up on work. And we had 0 weeks to do that in the fall semester of 2021. Instead, they gave us this like arbitrary, like this extra week of winter vacation that nobody asked for, which was allegedly supposed to help them prepare for the semester and get everybody online. But as Vic mentioned to me before the call, most people didn't have Moodle pages until last Wednesday. And so we didn't have time to prepare for our courses. And my profs didn't seem more prepared than they did last semester, aside from them now knowing how the hand up works on Zoom.
Yeah, it's really problematic. They're not doing the changes they have. And the reality is that 1 extra week in January, I'm sorry, but we all remember the pandemic starting March 16th. So I'm really utterly confused as to how long it's going to take for them to make some kind of immediate and like bold change.
And I wanted to talk about Proctorial and Cole and all of that. I'm lucky to not have this in my class. So I'm really blessed, I know, but I'm hearing stories of students going through that, and it's really painful. Like, I don't understand why, we're subjecting students to that on top of everything else. Like, I'm hearing stories of people like being forced to like stare at their screen for 3 hours, and like, I'm sorry, like I can't even stare at my screen for like 10 minutes. Like, I can't imagine doing an exam and like keeping your eyes focused on the screen for 3 hours. I don't think that's like very acceptable. Like, how do y'all feel about that? Like, why do you think the university is so like is it still happening? And why are they pushing for it to keep happening?
I don't know if it's okay if I go first, Payton, but again, I'm emphasizing the fact that they want to be bold, that they need to be bold, that they need to make these decisions, that they need to try different things. And I find the proctoring exams, the Cole exams, is them not taking that risk and making that change and doing something different. These proctored exams, these Cole exams are them trying to stay in the we were pre-pandemic. So obviously pre-pandemic, all exams were monitored. They had like people surveillance, and that's how exams worked. Obviously now that we're in COVID, they were like, oh, we want to keep the same structure. We just need to find the measurements to keep these structures intact. But they're not realizing how taxing that is on the individual themselves going through these exams. My brother had a proctored exam not long ago, and the internet went down. I swear to God, I'm downstairs. I am not upstairs with the rest of my family. They kind of have their own space. And it was chaotic for about 30 minutes, just on the sole fact that my brother's exam logged out, logged back in. He was unsure if he was going to be able to finish it. He was unsure if like it was going to be working. So then he pulled a fit, and obviously that affected everybody else in the house, all over Wi-Fi, which is so simple. But if this project would have been something on Word, or if it would have been an exam where here are your questions, do it on here and then submit it, it would have been completely different. There would have been less stress. There would have been no outbreak. There would have been no whole fight in my entire household over the Wi-Fi cutting out for 20 minutes, and that's just in my house. Now imagine people that have one room and they're with everybody that they want, and now they're already doing a proctored exam sitting next to people like in their house. And then if someone says something, if someone makes a loud noise, there's just problems left, right, and center. And the only thing that this is adding is additional stress to every single person on their plate, every single person that's just trying to get their like university degree. And one thing the administration made very clear at the beginning is that we paid for a university degree. So we paid to take these certain courses to get to where we have to get to. The thing is that they're providing this quote unquote service that is not being adapted to fit our predicament and to fit how we're going to learn it. Because yes, fine, we need to learn certain material, but if we're all sitting there stressed in a proctored exam, we're not going to learn anything progressively. And the other thing too is there's a lot of cheating. The university has been accusing students of cheating before they even have a chance to write their exam. So having this assumption that we're already going to do bad, and assuming that we're already going to, go the extra mile to cheat to get that extra grade, puts us already on an uneven playing field. So we're not going to look at them and respect them when they're already not respecting us, and acknowledging the fact that, we actually care about our degree and we actually care about our education. We're trying to get it. We're not trying to just cheat our way through it and do what we need to do. But if you're forcing us to take those routes, if you're going to force us to like not acknowledge our mental health, not acknowledge the fact that we're struggling, you know, we want to get our degree, we want to get those grades, so students are going to do what they have to do, and it's just completely unfair. It's take, and no one's actually taking a minute to be like, okay, what difference can we make? And the university has the power to make those differences, and they're not doing it.
Yeah.
Something I want to add on to that is, you know, Victoria mentioned that her brother was struggling with, and like, you know, doing the proctored exam, and she lives in Montreal. Like, she lives in a major city in Canada. Canada is massive, and there's so many regions that have really unstable internet connection. I know there's students in my classes who are living in like Nunavik in northern Quebec, or in other rural areas. You know, I'm going back and forth between my rural hometown and Montreal, to just depending on where I need to be. And the internet out there, luckily I live in town, but if I were living out of town, it would be nearly impossible for me and my brother to be doing online school at the same time based on bandwidth. And that's something that proctored exams are terrible for, and they're not offering. There's so many profs that they're not being considerate to students and students' needs in the way that their expectations are this semester.
Yeah. No, honestly, like the reaction to like assuming that students are going to cheat, like I think it comes off as like a little unwise. Like, yeah, you can definitely like crack down on like people cheating, or you know, you could start having discussions about why people are being pushed to consider the option of cheating. Like, you know, there's so many sources to why someone would be so stressed that they could consider that. Like, why don't we address that instead? I just think it's like totally unacceptable. And like, you know, I'm really lucky that like I had my exam on Moodle. Like last semester, my Wi-Fi stopped working for a while, and I had to do my exam through my phone's internet, and it would disconnect every 15 minutes. So like I'm really lucky that like I was able to reconnect on Moodle. I can't imagine like if I had been in Proctorial or whatever, like what would that have done to my grade, you know?
A lot. They would have not made any accommodations, I could promise you that, because they don't. And it's time and again that there's stories that you hear, horror stories, where people will literally lose connection, and that's it. My sister had that actually. My sister had an exam on Moodle, but you couldn't copy and paste, so she did it on Word, knowing that the Wi-Fi wasn't going to be stable. She was nervous or whatever. And when she went to go copy and paste it back onto Moodle or whatever, Moodle wouldn't let you paste. So she had to sit there and rewrite it. But then when she rewrote it all, it completely cut out. So she had to email her teacher, who then let her retake the exam. But then it was so messy. But like, again, like my siblings got really lucky. As Payton was saying, like I keep hearing these horror stories of people that don't even have internet connection, that have to go out and sometimes use their friend's internet connection, and all these. We're in a pandemic. You're not supposed to be going anywhere. So like, you know, it's crazy. I'm sorry you had to experience that, Sam, honestly. Like,
something else about or something that I hope comes out of this conversation about proctored exams and this like expectation that students are cheating is like, I really think that Concordia needs to re-examine what we consider cheating to be, and what value students not using their notes in exams really has on their future career. Because I don't know a single professional who would just like raw dog their work like without notes. like like without any sort of like, you're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna use my brain and I'm not gonna double check anything, and I'm just gonna go straight off of my mind. Like that's not something that professionals do, especially in these kind of like higher intensity courses like engineering or business or law, that like the undergraduate law program that we have. Like people in those professions, they always use their notes. So it seems really unnecessary to me to put students through this pressure, especially during a pandemic, to not use their notes, or to like further penalize them so that some students don't use their notes at all. Like personally, I don't have the capacity to cheat right now, because it takes like a lot of work to organize cheating, and people are burnt out. Like we're exhausted.
Yeah, honestly, like I think it just exposes like maybe a little flaw in like the way that we educate ourselves. Like, you know, if you base your exams off of memorization, like it's not even a reflection of what we're going to do in the future. Like I work in HR right now, and like, you know, I have the CNEST open, like I have all my tabs open whenever I'm doing work. I always have access to my information. So it doesn't make sense that like my exams would be based on like memorizing things that I don't need to memorize, you know? I think it just exposes maybe like honestly, like if this would have been a great opportunity for the school to think about, you know, new ways of doing examinations, maybe like, you know, having more of like seeing this as an opportunity rather than like a threat of cheating, you know? This could have been a great discussion that we could have had with the admin. And I feel like instead they just wanted to assume the worst and then like drag their heels or whatever the expression is. And like, yeah, it's not that great.
They wanted to find a quick fix rather than testing things out with us, which I find is really unfortunate because especially in the summer, there's summer courses. They could have tested different methods. They could have tested different curriculums. They could have tested different ways to test, and they obviously didn't. So it's really frustrating. And no, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's been a year that this is going on, and you know, like we should have started having this discussion like a year ago. Like I don't know why we're still in the same situation right now. It just seems weird. Something else, yeah, so I wanted to know about like the centralized system. Like how would you imagine like this centralized system of teaching, I guess?
Well, I'll give a brief answer, I guess, and then I'll let Payton kind of continue on it. But just essentially what we're really asking for when we say that is standards. There's no standards right now in what teachers are quote unquote obliged to do or recommended to do. Sorry, that's the problem. They're recommended to do a lot of things. They're recommended to film their courses. They're recommended to answer their students' emails. They're recommended to teach the course. They're recommended to have Zoom courses that are shorter than the actual like set time so that students can take the time on their own to do extra readings and whatnot to make it less like tense on the computer like we were saying before. But the problem is that these are all recommendations from the Provost Office rather than implementations. And what we're asking is for Provost to say, listen, I don't care what faculty you're in. I don't care what restrictions you have. Make it work with the fact that you need to record every single lecture so students can watch it. Because as of after last semester, most of the students were just under the impression everything was going to be kind of recorded. I have students that I know that have been taking jobs and they're like, fine, if my course is recorded, why am I going to attend, sit there, and when I can attend it after and I can work? So they're trying to take other opportunities. Or there's other students that like literally work because they're part of the essential crew. So like they don't have time to necessarily sit always through the class because they're being asked to work extra hours. In their head, fine, whatever, curfew's at 8, I'll come home and watch it at 8. But teachers are not forced to do that. So that's not an option for everybody. And it's just, that's such a simple thing. That's just like one of the like, many things that they can be doing consistently and like intact with. But having those expectations for students so they know what to expect from their teachers and enforcing them, having those enforcements. They have all these enforcements for us. So why, like what's happening with the TAs, what's happening with all the teachers, what's happening with all the part-time teachers? Why don't they have like expectations, you know? And that's kind of what we're really, really pushing for that.
Yeah. Are you gonna say something?
Payton?
I feel like too, there's a really big, and this is something that comes out when we sort of have conversations with the admin or with whoever else. I think there's a really big disconnect between the administration's understanding and professors' experience in the pandemic and students' experience in the pandemic. Because when you have precarious housing and you have precarious jobs and you are half living on student loans, maybe getting some money from your parents, mostly making your own money, you know, the pandemic is a really different experience than for somebody who has a professor's salary or an admin salary, and they're simply expected to stay home in their big house in Westmount for a couple of months of the year. Like it's a really different experience. And so when they're listening to our complaints, they literally cannot imagine what we're going through because they have no clue. Like they have no idea. And so when we say we're overwhelmed, you're giving us too much work, we have unstable internet, these are realities that they genuinely have never experienced and they don't know. And if they have experienced it, they're just like dicks then, I guess, because like they're not being empathetic with or sympathetic with students about it. But when, you know, so they're expecting that we have all this free time and we're just sitting in our homes all day. And that's just, as Vic just pointed out, like that's not the truth. Most students are working. I personally have 3 jobs. I know so many more students who have like to work just as much as I do or more, or are taking more classes than me, or have like family that have passed away from COVID. Like there's a lot happening in students' lives right now, and we're not like the students and admin and prof, like the pandemic is not the same for us. We're not in this together. Our realities are very different, and they need to recognize that.
Yeah, I think, there's a disconnect, like you mentioned, there's a disconnect between professors and students, and that those standards would address that disconnect. Like, I follow some professors on Facebook, and it's actually interesting seeing them realize that the students are going through a tough time. Because at first they're like, I don't understand why my students are not like turning their cameras on. Why aren't they participating as much? But then over time, they're like, oh shoot, like it's because, they're going through a lot. They're like dealing with a lot of issues right now. And, like, yeah, we can educate them on the situation with students, but at the same time, the obvious solution is to just have those universal standards, because we already know this is going on. We shouldn't wait for professors to realize that there's an issue. Like, we already know there's an issue. Let's just add that standard right now, because it's like, like Vic, like some of our business professors, they're like VPs, they're like School of Hard Knocks, they're like these big time consultants. Like, they don't care. They're like, in their head, they're like, pull up your bootstraps and like deal with it. And it's like, oh my God, like, what do you like? No, like, we're going through a lot right now. Like, stop with this mentality of like, oh, we can get through this. Like, bitch, we're not I'm not in some like I'm not in some like fancy home with like perfect Wi-Fi and like perfect time dedicated for studying. Like, I'm like trying to juggle everything right now,
And what's really unfortunate too is that, and this is part of why we released this campaign, why we're pushing for this campaign, is that the people that fill out the student surveys or that interact with the administration or that take the time to talk to the administration are often students that are quote unquote more privileged, that have the funding, that have like the parents that support them. I'm an exhibit, like I'm very lucky that I live with my family, my parents support me. So like I'm involved and I'm pushing with the administration, but not everybody has that luxury. So the administration sent us an email this week saying 15% of students like replied to our survey, and like, that's great. I'm excited to see the results, but I'm scared because that's 15%. That's not the whole student body. How many of those students were working full time so they didn't see the email or didn't have time to answer it? How many students were at a funeral so they missed the email, never got around to it, and didn't have the heart to take the time for 15 minutes to fill that in? Yeah, it's 15 minutes, but it's 15 minutes of our precious time. And as you know, in business school, time is money. Like, I'm not giving you my time when like you're already demanding it for 800 other things, So it's just frustrating to see. They think that they're doing a great job and they have the data, quote unquote, to support it, but their data is not representative of the student population. And that's what they really need to understand, is that there's so many students that they're forgetting. And yes, the first thing that they told us was that 95% of classes are online. So we've done fantastic. And I was like, yeah, but what about the other 5%? Like, there's still students that need to go in person, and some of them have health issues. Some of them have accessibility issues. Some of them are out of the country because they left, because as of March, like, they told you to leave, So it's just all these issues, and they're claiming that they're doing the best that they can because they're doing what's good for quote unquote the majority, but it's everybody else who's like struggling, that they really need the help, that they're not necessarily putting the accommodations for. And it's just, that's where it's really frustrating.
Yeah, and one specific issue that's come out of ASFA is students in bio and chem, or whichever classes need to have labs. There's been students who have complained that they'll have an expectation to go to a lab at Loyola, but then immediately after that lab, they're scheduled to be in an exam or to be in a class. But you can't stay on Loyola campus. There's nowhere, you can't go into the library. There's nowhere you can go. I think now you can like rent a classroom to sit in alone in advance or something like that. But I haven't heard much. I've heard like that might be happening, but still, like, that's a really big problem. That's like they're not like taking students' actual lives and like understanding them as people and considering that when they're making our schedules, when they're making our guidelines or our expectations. Another group of students that I want to point out who are being completely overlooked right now are student parents. I have lots of students in my classes who are parents, and their children are doing school from home too. And so they're in class and they're expected to have their camera on. And there's kids running around in the background which is so distracting. And I don't mean for other students, like obviously, but you know, it's distracting for you as a person. Like I'm looking at myself right now in this Zoom call, I can see my background. If there were children running around back there, I would not be able to focus on this conversation, right? And where these students used to have daycare options through the CSU's daycare service, that's no longer available for students, which of course it's not, but the university
Still have the daycare open, actually.
Oh, the daycare is still open?
Yeah, our daycare is open. The school's daycare, I don't think, is open, but the CSU still has it. I think we reduced the amount of students that we're allowed having in it because of the pandemic. But even at that, there's students that are not necessarily on island. There's students that like, yeah, we have it open, but it's not the same thing, right? Before you used to go to school, you can drop off your kid and then leave. But now what? They're gonna come and some of them have to come in the morning, drop off their kid. If you're not in the area, you don't have a car, well, you're gonna start taking the metro with your kid every day to drop them off. Like it's
a huge risk.
Exactly. Like we're happy that we can have obviously the service still available, but it's not just because it's available doesn't mean it's accessible. And that's a big thing that Concordia doesn't understand.
So it's obvious that there's a clear disconnect between the admin and the students. And like, you know, hey, maybe they just don't know what we're going through. Maybe they're just not aware. I don't know. So what I'm wondering now is like, what is something that people can do right now to help deal with this issue?
Yeah, so what we're asking students to do right now is to basically write a card. So Victoria mentioned earlier that people had these Reddit threads, or there was this Reddit thread that was kind of going around in the fall where students were really putting their hearts out and saying like, look, I'm struggling, like I'm going through it and the university isn't listening to me. So when we saw that and it was presented to the admin, it was really the only thing that got their like hearts to grow 3 sizes and for them to implement the pass fail option that we did finally get at the very last minute. And so we started this campaign, Dear Concordia, in order to sort of expand on that and amplify it and take these statements off Reddit and give students a pathway that those complaints can go directly to the administration, because the admin isn't creating that pathway for us. They canceled course evaluations last semester. We weren't expected to submit any course evaluations, so profs don't even know how they could improve for the semester because the admin didn't ask. So since they're not asking us what we need or how we're feeling, we've decided to encourage students to tell them by writing out a holiday card and to post it. So we have 2 things that we're asking students to do. The first is to write out just kind of how they're feeling and to motivate for some of the demands that we talked about. So just to recap, it's a centralized system to voice concerns, tuition justifications, the elimination of Proctorial and COL, universal standards for profs, and the re-implementation of pass-fail. We're asking students to write a card out and motivate for one or all of those demands, and they can fill that out in a Google form, and ASPA and the CSU are going to be printing off the responses and delivering those responses to the admin. And so if the admin feels like they can crumple up our fear and anxiety and heartfelt words to them, asking for support, and throw it in the trash and not do anything about it, then, I mean, that's between them and, you know, their conscience. But this is, we're hoping that it will be a better space to really bring those complaints forward. And then, so we're also asking students to post their card online. We found that in the town halls, just knowing that other students are feeling the same way that you're feeling it's really validating. Like I know myself, I felt really stupid all semester and like I was doing things wrong. And from the town halls, I realized that I wasn't doing things wrong and I'm not stupid. It's everyone is going through the same thing and is feeling that way. So if people can post their cards online with the hashtag Dear Concordia, we think it'll be a great way to kind of start a conversation where we can be open about how we're feeling this semester, because you can't just turn to the person next to you in class and start complaining to them anymore, right? You have to go out of your way to do that. So we're trying to create that space.
That's amazing. That's like a really creative way of like dealing with the issue. What I'm wondering, first, I will make sure to put the form in the comment section of the video. It'll be pinned. But yeah, I'm just wondering, like, when you say that you'll be sending it to the admin, like, are you sending it like to the dean? Like, are you sending it to like different people in the admin? Like, how does it work?
So my original goal was to have them all printed out. I was going to print them twice, one for really the Provost Office and one to give to the president and be like, here, you want a memory from your year at Concordia? Remember, every single student during the pandemic that literally has suffered, cried, and literally found reasons why to like not want to continue their education. And then one just for Provost to be like, listen, we've come to you, not me personally every single time, but like, this Concordia Student Union, the executive team has come to you on multiple occasions. We've told you what was wrong. We've told you students were struggling. We told you we've gotten complaints. And you look at us like we're making it up. You look at us like we're just asking for things out of like pure boredom. Like, no, like students are complaining. Students are consistently coming to us, telling us that they're suffering. Like, what do you want me to do? I've showed you, I've tried. Now, like, here's their testimonies. Is this enough? Like, what do you want me to do now? What do you need for you to listen and be like, okay, yeah, okay, like they're not making it up. This isn't just because students are bored and looking for something to complain about, you know, which is the first thing that the administration is always assuming is that we're complaining to like complain because we have nothing else to do. And it's like, trust me, there's 24 hours in a day. I would rather not be spending two reminding you that I cannot stand being in school, but I have to do what I got to do. And, you know, we're hoping that, like we said, like we can get enough, print them to both of them, and then they can read it and make that difference and make those changes because they are the ones that have that power. So let's pray for Provost. But
right.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, you know, like I see that Concordia is trying to like rise up in the ranks of like the best university in our country. Like, I think Concordia is amazing. Like, I think there's so much potential for us to grow and innovate. You know, like, I don't understand why we're trying so hard to like force like traditional ideas of education. Like, there's so much potential now to be like a leader and to innovate and to really set an example for the other universities. Like, I don't understand why, you know, they're fighting against that. I really hope like through those cards, they'll be able to understand that there's like a lot of potential for change. And if they ignore those cards, I mean, that just
if they
doesn't make
ignore
it
the
look
cards, we have something else up our sleeve. We have other plans, which I guess we can kind of throw now in. Do you want to throw that in, Payton? Or do you want to?
Yeah, the Let's Talk plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
we're gonna push it a bit later, but
yeah, so after this campaign, we're talking about building more campaigns to continue to push for this. We want to do a campaign in the next few months called Concordia Let's Talk to really highlight that, you know, we've been trying to contact them. We sent them these letters and they're still not talking to us. I mean, we're assuming they won't still talk to us. They're, you know, please do. But given that they're still not talking to us in February, we're going to be starting this campaign, Concordia Let's Talk, to really try and emphasize the struggles that students are having with their mental health, especially in winter semester when people are having seasonal affective disorder, and just being inside is really hard, especially with the curfew that we're facing in Quebec right now, and we're unable to go out past 8 p.m., which is really, shouldn't be really anywhere around 7 in case you end up outside and like stuck and whatever else. So yeah, we're doing that, and we have so obviously Victoria and I aren't doing this on our own. This is not a two-woman show. We have a ton of students who are supporting us, who came out of these town halls. The town halls were public, they were open to students, and they were promoted on all of our social media, both the CSU and ASFA. And so there's a Discord server that anybody can join. It's basically just where we're making plans and people are talking about the different things that the university is doing. And then Vic and I are there for support with campaign funds and things like this from ASFA and the CSU.
And then the direct link to get everything that needs to be said or that has been said to the administration to kind of reinforce them again, like, look, did you see this? Did you hear about this? The one thing that Concordia has done a good job in this year, and the only thing I will really give them credit for, is any big petition that has come out, they listen to. But unless it's big, they don't listen to it. So that's kind of the big issue. And that's why we're having disconnects with COVID, is because everybody has so many different issues. So there's not one big thing. It's completely a bunch of different things. And that's where, you know, obviously, as we mentioned multiple times, there's a big disconnect. So we're hoping that come March, we'll be able to run this next campaign and kind of remind them, like, okay, like, I'm sure they're going to say something for Bell Let's Talk, because who doesn't say anything for Bell Let's Talk? So, like, okay, where was the actual support that you gave? And if you read, Payton and I were reading before, just the breakdown of tuition, whatever, they mention how they're providing support still and services for students. And it's like, okay, that's funny because we don't feel supported. So what are these quote unquote support mechanisms that you're putting, and does it really affect the need that students, they want? So yeah, hopefully we'll have better direction for that coming soon.
Yeah, I wish the best for this project. And yeah, I'm just wondering, do you guys have anything else to share? I know that the Discord and the form will be commented below the video for anyone who's curious. But yeah, did you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I really want to encourage students to think really hard when they're in their classes about what they're getting out of that class. So do you have a TA? Did you have a TA last semester? Because we're all supposed to have TAs to help us, to help the profs with tech. And we're noticing a decline in TAs this semester. Is your class being recorded? That's an expectation. Are your notes available? Or are you able to access things from the course easily online? Because that's an expectation as well. So just really, you should be getting the education that you were getting before online. And if you're getting less of an education, you need to be talking about it, because it's a problem and we're being ripped off, and our futures are really hanging on this. This is our post-secondary education. This is our career education. And if we're not getting adequately educated, that's going to have impacts for us in the future. And the university needs to take responsibility for that.
Amen. I have nothing to add. Just please send in your letters, because the administration doesn't believe me. So like, I need you. Like, it's, it's annoying because everybody's like, oh, Victoria, thank you for doing all this work. Thank you for doing all this work. And I'm like, yeah, like I didn't do it. Like I didn't do, none of this is the Concordia Student Union. All of this is students at large, students making complaints, students putting in the work and saying what they have to say. Because if the whole doesn't do it, if everyone doesn't put that voice in, my voice means absolutely nothing. So I just, I guess just an emphasis on like taking the time to like, tell them when they're wrong, because they are here for you. That is their job, to work for you, to get you the education that you need. So make sure that they do that to an adequate standard. And I'll be here to help you support and make that voice 10 times higher than it was. So yeah, that's about it. Well, we will, not I.
Period. Well, thank you so much, Payton and Victoria, for coming today to talk about this.
Thank you for having us, Sam. Like, you're a lovely host, and we are so honored.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you to those who are viewing this video. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this. Please, if you are a student, participate in this project. If you know students, send this video to them. Send the form, send the Discord. Like, it's really important that we talk about this. If you're going through a lot, like, please take the time to talk about it. There's so many people working towards making the situation better for you. And yeah, I hope you all have an amazing Sunday. Next week on the show, we are going to have Hunter from Frigo Vert, and we're going to be talking about an exploration of new health and food practices in the community. All right. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye.